everything in our life was back to normal. And so that was good in a sense, but also very difficult because we weren't the same people anymore. We had this freedom and this adventure and the constant changing of everyday life to then go back to the Groundhog Day. We all struggled. So every single one of us struggled at different times and in different ways.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have with us Erin, the founder of RoamGeneration, which is a PR firm for travel and luxury brands. And what's unique is that Erin actually runs this whole operations from her yacht with a family of 5 doing a very nomadic sailing lifestyle. So that's really interesting to look at. Hi Erin, welcome to the show.
Hi Rax, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out to come on, even though you are like sailing at the ocean right now. Let's start with a backstory or introduction of you and your family, because I think there's a lot to talk about there on why you guys transit to this lifestyle as well.
Yeah, sure. So we weren't sailors. We'd never owned a boat before. We had no idea how to sail. We weren't rich. So just to get all those things out of the way, we were a very kind of average family living in the suburbs of Adelaide, excuse me, in Australia. And one night we were watching TV. We were just kind of flipping through Netflix, and my husband chose the documentary by Laura Decker, the youngest girl to have ever sailed around the world. And at the time, I think she was only 14. And she went to sail around the world all by herself at the age of 14. And we watched this whole documentary kind of in silence and in awe. And at the end of the documentary, we had already decided that that's what we were going to do. So don't ask me how. I have no idea. We are not renowned for making these huge decisions from just watching a documentary. We had never done anything similar before, but somehow something in that, maybe we were hypnotized. I don't know. Something in that documentary spoke to the both of us, which is crazy because, you know, normally it would be one person that would want to do it and the other person would be like, you're insane. And then you just never kind of talk about it again. But yeah, both of us wanted to do it. And 2 years later, our whole family, we all set off from Australia. And we flew to the Caribbean into Grenada, where we had previously bought our boat a couple of months earlier, sight unseen. And yeah, the rest is kind of history. That was back in 2018. And we've been kind of either out here sailing or at home kind of during COVID for 18 months. We've been, living the boat life ever since.
I've always had this stereotype, or I think the world has this stereotype about Australians are in love with the ocean because of all the surfing culture and stuff like that, right? But I don't think all of Australia is only by the coast, right? So were you guys by the coast, or like was surfing and the ocean?
Look, not really. I mean, yes, we did live on the coast. We actually lived very close to the beach in Adelaide, but I grew up in Wagga, which was an inland town 5 hours from the nearest beach. I used to see the ocean once a year when my family and I would go on like a camping holiday to the coast. So it was never a huge part of my life. And yes, while we lived close to the beach in Adelaide, you know, we could go weeks where we don't even step foot on it because life would just get so busy. So no, we didn't grow up. You know, a lot of Australians grow up doing surf lifesaving or surfing, or like I wouldn't say either of us are particularly sporty when it comes to the ocean. So it wasn't like it was a natural progression. In saying that, my dad was a sailor and he used to teach learn to sail classes in Wagga Wagga. And so he would drag me along. Sometimes I'm sure it would be mum saying, please just take one of the kids and give me a break. So he would just take turns and like take one of us kids to these learn to sail classes. And, you know, at the time I didn't really like it because all the cool kids were in their speedboats. So they were all like zooming around. And here I was stuck on this little sailboat, you know, barely moving, sun blaring down, like Wagga was super hot. And I just remember, you know, probably being made to wear zinc on my nose and one of those really dorky hats with the flap at the back because that's what sailors seemed to wear. And I just remember thinking, God, I wish that I was on a speedboat right now. So yeah, I don't know, something obviously kind of sank in from those days of being with my dad and being out on the lake, but it was very different to this. Like now we live on a yacht, and I mean the word yacht can sound a bit pretentious. It's not a super yacht by any means. It's 47 foot long. It has 2 cabins. So we have a master cabin, which I'm in here at the back of the room with a queen size bed, and it's big enough to walk around the bed. And then I've got my desk over here at the side, which is small but very comfortable, and I've got dual screens and, you know, everything that I need to run a company. And then at the front of the boat, my 3 boys share a cabin. It's got 2 bunks on either side. And then we've got 2 bathrooms and a saloon that can fit about 8 people around the table with a TV. And then we've got a galley kitchen. So it's got everything that we need. It's bigger than, say, a caravan, but it's obviously nowhere near as big as a house. But yeah, we're able to move our home around the world with us. So it's quite amazing.
Yeah, that sounds nice enough from the description of your yacht, right? Like what you mentioned, it sounds good and there's enough space for working and just living life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I want to talk about this transit in the sense of like I guess there's many things to think about when you want to move from like on the land life to something on the water, right? Plus, what I hear from you, I'm not sure if I got this right, but it took 2 years for you guys to basically, from the viewing of the documentary, the inspiring documentary, to actually launching the lifestyle. So the preparation kind of took 2 years. Was that mainly really preparation for all 2 years, or was there like just some dilly-dallying, and then how long did it actually take to, make all the transit happen?
Well, I think 2 years was a good amount of time. We consistently worked towards it for 2 years straight. I would say almost every day there would be something little, even tiny, that we would do that would get us closer to that. So whether that was watch a YouTube video or not buy a piece of clothing or don't buy lunch that day or, transfer $20 into our savings account because we managed to save $20 on something that we had to buy, whatever. We would be consciously thinking about it nonstop for those 2 years. And it really did take that long to get everything in order. So we had to save up a lot of money. That was the first thing. So that was why we needed a long enough amount of time. We kind of reverse engineered it. So when we figured out, okay, when we came up with the idea, we literally had no idea what a boat costs. Like you could have told me it was $1 million or $20,000 and I wouldn't have had a clue. So we figured out, all right, we need around $100,000 to get a boat that is going to be seaworthy and safe for our family. And then we're like, all right, so we also are going to need spending money as well to survive for those couple of years. It was always going to be a sabbatical. We managed to get leave of that pay from our jobs. We took the children out of private school and put them into public school to save money. We did so many things. We had international university students come and live with us. So they were quite young. They were, just 17, 18. We were responsible for them. We had to feed them 3 meals a day. We had to ensure that they got to their school. We had to take them to after school activities and stuff. But it was worth it because we're getting paid pretty good money to have them. So at one stage we had 3 students living with us, plus our 3 kids in a 3-bedroom house. So all the kids were in one room. The students got all the kids got put into the lounge room. The students got the other 2 bedrooms. So it was hectic. We were doing a lot of things. Like we both applied for promotions at our work, and luckily enough got them. We cancelled like private health insurance, any extra things like cable TV or anything that we didn't really need. Just cancelled everything. So we made a lot of sacrifices for those 2 years. But we ended up finding joy in like the smaller things. So where we would normally have maybe gone to a restaurant and everyone got a meal each, with a family of 5, that can easily be just like $100 just gone in one night for an average kind of pub meal, nothing exciting. We would start doing things like going and getting, $5, $10 worth of hot chips, and going and sitting on the beach. And then we'd go, this is just as nice as if we had gone to that restaurant. We're seeing the sunset and the kids are playing on the beach. And yeah, we ended up doing free things like going for bike rides on the weekend or going hiking. And so, yeah, it was good. And in the end, we didn't really feel like we're missing out on anything. And I think it obviously made it easier knowing that at the end of this, there's only like a finite period of time that we've got to get through. I think if we had made the time frame 4 years or 5 years or 10 years, like it just would have been impossible to maintain. But because it was a relatively short amount of time, we were able to kind of keep the consistency going that we needed to achieve the goal without losing hope. I mean, certainly there were days where I was like, oh, this is too hard, let's just not bother, or where my husband felt the same. But luckily we never felt the same for an extended period of time at the same time. So if someone was feeling just down, or I'm sick of not being able to buy clothes, or I just want a new handbag, or that was me, obviously, not my husband, then the other one would be like, come on, it'll be worth it, let's go watch an episode of SV Dallas. So then we'd watch an episode. They were like the number 2 selling YouTubers, still are. And then we'd be like, okay, right, I remember why we're doing this. I know why we're making all these sacrifices. Let's go.
It's like recharging the inspiration. Right?
Exactly.
Get a new
always
dose
need
of
to
it.
do it. Exactly.
There's so many things I'm curious about that you mentioned, but I think finances is a good place to start, and it's apparently like obviously a very practical place to start with, right? So for a typical, or at least a big group of nomads, a nomadic lifestyle makes a lot of sense because financially it's cheaper, in the sense that if they are, say, from the States and they go to Mexico, right? And if they are already paying rent in the States and everything, moving to Mexico is finances is not a consideration because it's actually a plus point to the financials. But it seems from your story that it was actually quite taxing on the finances, right? So some of the questions I probably have is that, did you guys own a house before that? And what do you do with the house? Do you sell it away or do you rent it out now? What's the...
Yes, so we were homeowners. We had a nice house by the beach. On the first trip, which was the sabbatical, which we thought was only going to last for 2 years, we rented that out. And that was okay. We rented it to my sister. It wasn't particularly difficult. You know, nothing really went wrong. So we got pretty lucky with that. Then we went home because COVID happened and we got stuck at home for 18 months. So it was great to be able to go back to our house. Kids go back to school. We all went back to our jobs. Within like a week or two, it was like we'd never left. Everything in our life was back to normal. And so that was good in a sense, but also very difficult because we weren't the same people anymore. We had this freedom and this adventure and the constant changing of everyday life to then go back to the Groundhog Day. We all struggled. So every single one of us struggled at different times and in different ways. So the reintegration to life wasn't as easy as we thought it would be. And then, of course, COVID on top of that, Australia had it pretty good for a while. Then kind of we started having lockdowns as well. So being locked down in our house, no sunshine, like, you know, we're used to living on a boat. We're used to getting so much vitamin D. We're used to being outside all the time. Now we're stuck indoors, can't go out, can't see family, can't do anything. So we all kind of struggled, as the whole world did, you know, nothing new there. But it gave us a really good amount of time. 18 months was a decent amount of time that we all got back into land life, and we were there for long enough to be able to compare it to boat life, which we'd also had for, you know, just over 2 years almost, and to say, you know what, we want to do boat life still. So at that stage, we decided to sell our house. We toyed with the idea of selling our house on and off for a long time before that. We were always too scared. But by the time we made the decision, we were like, yeah, we're ready. No, like, we're not scared whatsoever. Let's just do this. We know we want to go back to the boat. We can't afford to continue to live that lifestyle if we don't sell the house. That was as simple as that. We'd exhausted all of our savings and we had this boat on the other side of the world just sitting there waiting for us. So if we want to get back, we didn't feel like we were done. We didn't feel like we could, you know, have sold the boat and been happy. So we were like, let's just go back, finish the trip, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. And, you know, the boat, we had all of our house money still sitting there. It was just that we needed a little bit of it to be able to afford to get over to the boat and to, you know, set our life up and be complete digital nomads. And I'm lucky enough that I have a company, and so I'm earning money and we're able to survive off that. But we also didn't want that anchor of like the house tying us down. We wanted to be all in. And so that's what we've been now for the last 2 years. And honestly, like, we never think of the house. We never, not once, regretted it for 1 second. It's, yeah.
Got
it's
it. Got it.
not, yeah.
So that means for
not
the
an issue.
For the first trip, or when you guys first started, you viewed the trip as more of a pure expense. You are not really thinking of, hey, I'm trading the house into a boat. You are really thinking that I will have the house, but I'm saving up for 2 years to be able to afford like a vacation, to buy a boat. It's almost like acquisition of another asset, if you call it. And I think I would like to talk about whether this is an asset or liability, but it's really an acquisition of another big property, right, to own, which is why there was a need to really save up that much, because it's not just a life transition. It's almost like a additional piece of thing that comes into your life.
Exactly.
Got it. So let's talk a bit about whether the boat is an asset or a liability, because this is always an interesting discussion, especially for someone that's just transiting into boat life, right? I'm assuming you guys have like think twice or thrice about, like, if we go and buy a boat, then there's that maintenance and everything, and obviously boats tend to at best maintain the value. I don't think I've heard anyone sell the boat for a higher price than they got it, unless they deliberately do it.
You haven't heard from me yet.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, tell me about it.
Yeah. Okay. So traditionally, boats are not an asset in that they're not an appreciating asset usually, because they just go down in value, unlike houses, which traditionally go up in value. However, we bought our boat undervalued. So, I mean, my husband and I are pretty savvy. We've been lucky. Our family always says, oh my God, you're so lucky. How do you do this every time? But we spend a long time researching, and by the time we make a purchase, we know when we're getting a good deal. So we got a good deal in our boat, probably got it, $20,000 underpaid. We did work to it while we had it. So my husband is an aircraft technician. He just got it, really up and running, great systems. Everything was maintained well. We did some additions. Obviously, all of these things cost money. So if you were to add it all up in the end run, we probably didn't make money. However, we've actually just sold our boat. So our boat is getting too small for us now. We came aboard with 3 little kids, and now we've got 3 big kids. 2 of them are bigger than me. So it's feeling very tight. And all along for years, we've wanted a catamaran. So we're finally getting our catamaran. So we actually ended up selling our boat for $50,000 more than what we bought it for. That's US dollars. So in Australian dollars, it's like $80,000 more than what we paid for it, which essentially pays for all of the maintenance we've done on it and part of our trip as well. So we got really lucky, but it's also because of, the pandemic and the Great Resignation and remote work. All of those reasons are causing people to buy boats. So boats have just gone up in value, which is how we got so lucky for selling it for more than what we bought it for. Now, because we bought another boat, kind of cancels each other out, but we've also been lucky enough, I say the word lucky, but I don't believe in luck. I know that we've put in a ton of work to find this next boat. Our new boat is a catamaran, 45 foot. So our current boat's 47 foot. It's slightly shorter, but it's obviously twice the width because catamaran means it has 2 hulls. So the kids are going to have a bedroom each. There'll be 4 bedrooms, bigger living area, 4 bathrooms, much more space all out, and cockpit's huge. But we've also done it again. We've got lucky and found a boat that's been undervalued. It comes with a stack of gear and spare parts. Everything's upgraded. And so, yeah, we've got a good deal. And, look, people, we can only afford to do this essentially because we don't have a mortgage. People work full time, often both partners in jobs that they spend a lot of time doing to pay for a house that they don't get to spend time in because they're at work all the time. And you kind of think, oh, I paid $600,000 for my house, or I paid $1 million for my house. Yeah, but you don't think about the amount of interest that you're paying off on that loan over the next 30 years. You end up paying a lot of money for your house. Now, yes, we don't have a house at the moment, but that means we also don't have all of those expenses, which means we're also not forking out all of that money in interest. And so the money that we are able to invest, because we don't have all of those expenses that come with a house, we don't have a car, we don't have, all of the associated insurances. We save a lot of money by living out here. Obviously, it costs money, more money than if you were living on land, because we're traveling the world as we move around. But because we don't have a house and the other costs, it kind of works out to be less. Out here, I am the only one that works. My husband does homeschool and looks after the boat. At home, we couldn't afford to live on just one wage because, in Australia, we don't need to have, I should say, but everyone has. If you want to kind of if we want to fit back into the social status that, which is just bullshit anyway, but you know what I mean, if we want to go back to where we were, nice house, nice car, nice clothes, nice job, whatever, then we need to both of us work. And we don't want to do that. We're happy not having not fitting in with the Joneses. We're happy not having a car and that our house is a boat. We just don't care anymore. So we feel confident that with our house money in the bank being invested, this new catamaran that we've got at a good price, that by the time this is done, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, whenever, sell the boat, have our house money, go home, buy a house, and we'll just be, roughly where we started. It's not we're going to be living under a bridge. And we've had this amazing experience at the same time. So, yeah, we're not stressing about the future. I don't know. We just both feel like we're pretty smart, savvy people. We'll figure it out.
That sounds good. I reckon even if you don't make a profit and everything just offsets enough for, like you say, the maintenance plus the purchase, and then still funds a bit of the whole lifestyle, that's actually a pretty good deal in the sense of it's just, and you get to enjoy and spend the life you want, right? And do you guys buy the boat right off with cash, or do you have also a mortgage or interest to pay per month? Because it sounds like you just bought it right off.
Yeah, we just bought it cash. Lucky enough that because we've had 3 or 4 houses, we did renovations back in Australia, so we just made money along the way, and now we're at the stage where we're able to buy it cash. But it's not it's not a super yacht. It's a modest catamaran, the one that we just bought, or that we're in the process of buying. So
got it.
A lot of people probably wouldn't be happy having that because, you know, people want to have the big flash house, or they would want to come out here and have the big flash boats, but it's still like we're happy with it. We think it's pretty good. But obviously there's always bigger and better that you can have
Yeah.
as well. Like
It's a
anything.
never ending desire
Never
of like
ends.
wanting something bigger.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And do you guys spend a lot of time learning about sailing and stuff like that? Because I reckon you guys didn't really have, maybe you had some because you went with some trips on your dad, but I know you guys were never really like sailing background, right? So was it difficult to pick it up, or was there any challenges?
Look, we took a couple of courses back in Australia. And what else did we do? Oh, before we left, we bought a trailer sailor, so a small 21-foot boat, which we would just practice on every weekend. And that was really fun. It was like a tiny little boat, had a cabin, all five of us. The kids were like little, one was a baby at that stage. So it was fun, just kind of would camp out in there and go on day trips and then stay overnight. And so, yeah, we really loved having that little boat. And it was a great experience at learning how to look after a boat, how to handle a boat, how to maintain a boat. So highly recommend that if you are thinking of doing boat life in the lead up to leaving, buy yourself a little trailer sailor. They're like priced that you can buy them for 10 grand and you'll probably sell it for 9 grand. You're not going to lose much money, and it's just going to give you a whole heap of experience along the way. So yeah, we did that, but we didn't do anything full on. We didn't take any, you know, we didn't hire a charter boat and pay 5 or 10 grand to do that. We didn't do any of the prestigious sailing school kind of classes or anything. We just figured it out. It's not rocket science. I think as long as one of the two of you, if you're doing it as a couple, is relatively like handy and savvy, I mean, I'm not, but luckily my husband is, then you'll figure it out. So many people just get out here and make the mistakes and figure it out along the way. Look, I'm not saying be reckless. I'm not saying just don't do any research and just get out here and be like cowboy and crash into everyone or whatever. I am saying be sensible, do your research, watch the videos, read the books, you know, go on a few sails, ask a lot of questions, get someone to take you under their wing. But until you're out on the boat, like going from the 21-foot boat to our 47-foot boat felt like, oh my God, this is enormous. How on earth are we going to sail this thing? But until you're out here, like there's not really any amount of preparation that can prepare you for sailing your own boat. I mean, there probably is, but for us in those 2 years, what we did was enough, and we just figured the rest out along the way.
Well, sounds like you guys did put in a lot of effort, but you guys also made a lot of strategic, I would say financially practical decisions on how to pick up the skills and everything. I think that's great. Let's talk a bit about the kids, because I think this is obviously a big thing, a change in their life. And sounds from what you're saying that back then they weren't even like that old enough to really figure out what the hell is happening. But I'm sure you guys had that consideration. I mean, 3 kids, taking them out from the regular life that they were used to in schools and everything, and then just bringing them onto a boat life. How was the process like? Like, what surprised you guys? Was it easy to break the news to them? Was there any resistance to it?
Yeah, we were lucky because they were so young, and I would really recommend that. Go when they're young. There was no resistance. We spoke about it from the minute we came up with it. It was always like when we got on the boat. It was never if, it was never like maybe, or do you want to go on the boat? It was just like when we go on the boat. So for them, by the time the boat came, it was just something that we'd been talking about for 2 years of their life, and they were excited, really excited. They were too young to really care about leaving friends. They had changed schools only like, you know, a year or 18 months beforehand. So they didn't have like best friends that they'd been going to school with for a long time. The hardest thing would have been leaving their grandparents and their cousins. But again, like they were quite young, so they got over it pretty quick. Not the grandparents thing, obviously they miss them. And now they really miss their cousins. But what was harder was when we went home to Australia during those 18 months, and by this stage they were like, you know, 4 years older or something, and they had opinions, they had friends, they were not backwards at coming forwards about telling us what they did and didn't want. And so when we first arrived home, they were all like, we never want to go back to the boat again. The land is awesome. Nan and Pop are buying us ice creams every day, and like we've got friends and we got invited to their birthday party and there's McDonald's. But obviously the novelty wore off, and by like the 12-month mark, we were all, including the kids, going, oh my God, boat life was so amazing. And because you forget all the hard things. So we were reading a book, which actually ended up being a funny story. That was a book that a friend gave us called, I think it was called Northern Magic, about a family that sailed around the world. And we were just reading it as a bedtime story. And it brought back so many memories. Like the descriptions just made our hearts ache. Like we would be sitting on inland in lockdown, winter, cold, miserable, and going, oh my God, I can really just feel that. Like I remember what it felt like sitting in that cockpit with the boat swaying and seeing the sunset and the dolphins. And so yeah, that reading that really made us all decide that we were ready to go back to the boat. However, and the story about that was that the author of that book, ended up reaching out to me. He'd seen an article that I wrote and said, oh, my family and I sailed around the world. I really loved your article. I wanted to just reach out and say hi. And I'm like, oh my God, we read your book. Your book was instrumental in making us come back out here. And that's amazing that you're reaching out to me, because I really should have reached out to you. But we've had a few really serendipitous moments like that. At the start, I mentioned how Laura Decker's documentary was the one that made us do this. When we were in the Azores after having just come back from Australia, so we'd been home for 18 months, our boat was in the Azores, which is a little island off Portugal, a group of islands. Laura Decker was there, like on her boat, had just sailed in, and my husband came, he's like, Laura Decker's boat, that was called Guppy or something, wasn't it? I think that's what it was called. And I said, yeah. He goes, her boat, like, I'm pretty sure it's her boat's here. And he didn't really seem excited or anything. I'm like, are you serious? This is huge. You're saying Laura Decker's here. He's like, oh, I'm sure she's not actually here. I'm like, no, I saw on social media that she is on her boat, and they were like, I just figured that her social media was behind time and she wouldn't be here or anything. I said, they were crossing the Atlantic, so it could well be her. Anyway, I went and knocked on the hull. Sure enough, Laura Decker just came out of her boat. And we're like, oh my God, you're responsible for changing our whole life. Like literally our whole life changed because we watched your documentary one night. And she was kind of like, oh, okay, that's nice. She must get it all the time. So she didn't give us a huge reaction or anything. But we're like, you don't seem to be understanding this. Our whole life is just different because of you. Thank you. This is amazing.
So how old is she now? Like, is she like 20 around?
Yeah, she's actually married with a child now, but she still looks very young. She's, I think, mid-20s, I think. But yeah, very mature, obviously, for her age to have done what she did at 14. Now it's like she's a mom with a husband, even though she still looks like she's only about 18. Yeah, very lovely. Gave us a tour of her boat. And so that was just crazy to think that we ended up meeting the person that like inspired us to do this whole thing. Anyway, where was I going with the kids thing? Once we got back out to the boat, it's been harder because the kids are older. Hamish is a teenager now, and it's not as like easy as when they were little and all they cared about was just being with mum and dad and swimming. Now they've got like, they'll say things that are like, I haven't had a friend, or I haven't spoken to a friend for 2 months. And you're just like, you feel guilty because that you think back to when you're a teenager and how important your friends were. So it is definitely harder out here now, but the good still outweighs the bad, which is why we've still chosen to continue to live on the boat. And they're all on board. They agree that like, yeah, let's give it another like couple of years. Maybe we'll sail back through the Pacific or something, and then we can reassess after that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I do reckon a lot of traveling families have this issue of the kids starting to feel a bit lonely, or in the sense that they make a new friend and they are basically leaving. I mean, it's an issue even the adults face, not just the kids, right? But you can imagine like at least the adults are mature enough, and like we have so much other distractions, whereas kids wants to hang out with like their friends and stuff like that. So
exactly,
we talking about the lifestyle, and I think this is an interesting topic to think about, although it wasn't like the road I wanted to go down. But there's this idea of thinking about how long are you going to do this for, and this applies to all nomadic lifestyles, say, regardless whether you do it by the waters, by the land, or whatever. People who are not in this lifestyle will always ask this question. I think whenever like you say you are leaving, they will ask you like, how long are you going to do this for? Like, are you going to travel forever and stuff like that? But there's always this idea that I think most of us know that it doesn't really matter. Like, there's no real forever. Like, it just changes with time. The whole concept of this is not really the idea of a travel lifestyle. I feel like I think the whole concept is the idea of freedom, the ability to choose what you want to do when you want to do it. So it doesn't matter like if I leave now, I don't really care if I'll be gone for like 1 year, 4 years, or whatever. I just know that whenever I want to do something, I can just change it accordingly.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. Yeah, look, I couldn't tell you. I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, I know that we'll be in Australia in a month's time because I've booked our tickets home, but usually I can't tell you where I'll be in a month's time. I think what we've figured out after living on the boat now for, you know, almost 4 years is that we have a time frame of when it's good to when it goes bad. And it seems to be about the 18-month mark, which is why we've booked tickets home. So I think we've decided going forward that we're going to have a break every 18 months because living on a boat is very difficult most of the time. Yes, we have, you know, the payoffs in that we don't have to go to work and we don't have to rush off to go to school and we don't have all the afternoon activities. And so that makes life easier, but everything else is harder. So after about 18 months, the novelty wears off and you're like, I'm just done with this damn boat. Give me an endless hot shower and a bed that doesn't move and a car and that I can just like duck to the shops in 5 minutes instead of it being like a 2-hour event. Yeah, so that's, I think with going home every 18 months, whether that's, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 months or whatever, and then coming back again, it would be enough to kind of keep us going. It's just going to come down to the kids. Honestly, they're the ones that are going to end everything because they're going to get vocal enough that we won't be able to not listen to them. At the moment, they'll have a bit of a whinge, but then the next day they'll be like, oh my God, living on the boat's amazing. This is the best life ever. So you learn to kind of like take what they say with a bit of a grain of salt. But once they are getting a bit older, I'm sure they're going to be being much more convincing in saying that they want to go home. Oh, disappeared. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you, but it's very funny because like so just for the listeners' purpose, so you have this mock background, which is just a picture, but then your fingers like glowing suddenly on and off because the sun is shining in. So that was funny.
The sun is shining in, and then I just disappear every now and then. Yeah, so we kind of say we're going to do it for as long as it's fun. And whether that's, yeah, like you say, 1 year, 2 years. I think now that we've bought a new boat, it'll be at least probably another 2 years. But, you know, Hamish is going to be getting up closer to 16 then. That's getting pretty old. He'll be saying, look, Mum, I want a girlfriend and I want to get my license and I want a job. So who knows? But I think one thing's for sure is I really can't see us going back to normal life because how can you after living like this? I mean, I'm sure after a couple of years we probably would fit back in. It would be fine. We'd make it work. But I think I would rather do, like you said, like, okay, well, if this has to end, what's the next thing we can do? Or how else can we design our life that it works for kind of everyone? And whether that's maybe we settle down somewhere in the one place, maybe it doesn't have to be Australia, maybe we can go and live in Greece, or maybe we can, you know, like I just like the idea of doing something that gives us freedom and a bit of adventure. So kind of like watch this space, I guess.
Gotcha. And how old are your 3 kids? You're saying one of them is about 16, right? And the other 2?
No, so one's 13 now. So I'm just saying, like in a couple of years he'll be getting close to 16. So yeah, he's almost 14. The other is 12 and then 8.
Oh, okay. It's not too far apart, I assume. I don't know. I don't have kids, but sounds to me like they can hang out well together. Yeah. Got
well,
it.
Yeah, you would think so, but they fight a lot.
And are they all boys? Like 3 boys or
all boys? Yeah,
okay.
all boys, which makes it pretty rowdy on this boat.
That's how the male siblings hang out, I guess. That's their way of communication. Because I have a brother as well. Yeah, I mean, like that's just the way things work.
You get it. Yeah.
And what's your travel lifestyle like on the boat? Like, do you guys spend a lot more time, or rather, like, just how much time do you spend on land versus like on the boat, right? Like, do you dock somewhere and maybe spend a whole month somewhere, or no? Most of the time you're just on the boat.
Yeah. No. So we kind of spend a variety of, you know, start again. We either are anchoring sometimes or we're in a marina sometimes. In Greece and around the Med, there's also been the option of going like on the town wall, which is super fun. And I love being on town walls because you just get to step off and you're in the middle of the city. So over in the Mediterranean, that's been primarily the 3 things. In the Caribbean, we pretty much only anchored, but we're always only 200 meters offshore and we go to land every single day. So whether that's just to go to the shops or go for a walk or, you know, go and do some sort of activity. Over here, we've definitely spent more time in a marina. We're in a marina right now, and it's just easy in a marina. You get unlimited water, you've got unlimited power, you get to step off your boat and you can walk to town and stuff. But yeah, we spend a lot of time on land, and we go to land pretty much every day. We probably spend on average 2 to 4 weeks in each place. We're pretty slow travelers. We just kind of like getting somewhere, and then when you learn where the supermarkets are and where everything is, it just becomes easy. And then the thought of moving again so quickly and then having to kind of figure all that out again sometimes feels too hard. And on average, without kind of time out here, we usually spend around 2 months in each country is what's kind of worked out on average. However, we've wintered in Sicily where we spent about 7 months. We've spent 3 months in Tunisia. We ended up spending like 8 months on and off in Grenada in the Caribbean. So it varies, but overall we're pretty slow travelers.
So it sounds like you guys don't really, I mean, obviously you take the weather into consideration, but you guys don't really chase the summer per se, right? Like as long as it's warm enough and you guys are comfortable, you'll stick around for quite a while.
Yeah, so to sail around the world, you really have to go with the seasons. You can't go where you want when you want. So we do only stick to the seasons that are safe to sail in, and then we make our move. Like, so in winter we sit still, or in this winter we're actually going home, because in the Mediterranean it's just not safe. You can't sail around, it's cold, you have to be hunkered down, there's lots of rough weather. And then when it becomes summer, we sail away again. If you want to cross an ocean, you've got to do that at a certain time of year, because that's when it's the safest time to do. So it's all kind of it's like almost like a migration. All of the boats are pretty much doing the same thing at the same time.
Right.
And so that makes it good to be able to make friends and to keep up in touch with people. Like if we cross the Atlantic next year in our new boat, we already know a couple of other families that are also crossing the Atlantic, because you all go at the same time. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
then once you
interesting.
get to the Caribbean, yeah, same kind of deal. So it's pretty much the same all around the world, that it's the seasons that dictate where you go and when.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge in living on a boat or a boat life? I mean, one of the things I kind of thought might be tough is that, well, most of the boat life couples I've seen are like a couple, so two people, but having a family of five kind of means like you guys have to spend a lot of time together in a rather confined space. Does that trigger any like anger issues or stuff like that, or conflicts?
Not at all. Do I look like I'm totally normal? Yes, 100%. Biggest challenge for us are the kids and homeschool. We always say if we were retired and out here, oh my God, it would be so much easier in a sense. But in another sense, it wouldn't be. Luckily, we're fit, we're young, we're healthy. Dave can maintain the boat and do all of that, because that would be harder when you're older. But the kids do make it far more difficult than we see the people that don't have children out here. But also, they also make it far more rewarding, I'd like to think. Whenever bored, we've always got so much to do, so much to see together, to show them. It makes our family very close because we've been together so much for so long. Homeschool is just, for us, it's been very difficult, and we've struggled constantly for the past 4 years to get that to go well. So yeah, I mean, the learning the weather, learning how to sail, learning how to maintain your boat, all of that kind of pales into comparison to entertaining and educating 3 kids in a small space.
That's a very interesting topic, because I was just wondering, how do you juggle between homeschooling the kids, travel, and then work as well for you, right? So these are like 3 major components that I think might be tougher, especially like, I mean, world schooling is a growing concept, and I think world schooling, at least you have a more changing or diverse environment, because as you travel and you go to different cities, obviously you see different things, right? But when you have to do it just on the boat, the environment is a lot more consistent, I would say, or like there's more monotonous. So how do you balance between the 3 things? And when you say that homeschooling the kids was the biggest challenge, in that sense, what's the biggest challenge in that?
Yeah. Luckily for me, my husband does the homeschooling. The first time around, I did it because I wasn't working. Now that I'm working, it would be literally impossible for me to do that as well. So we knew that the second time around that would be his job. He's not a teacher. He's not really even a people person. So for him, it is very difficult. Like he's a mechanic. He doesn't want to deal with emotions, and the kids are always complaining about something, and he's just like, this is too much. I'm just used to swinging spanners and, you know, fixing shit. This is so for him, it's a lot. So how do we deal with it? We only just recently have asked for help, and we have got a former educator who's also a mum who also educated her 4 kids on the road for 12 years. They're adults now. They all have good jobs, went on to college and everything. So we're like, okay, she's done this and she clearly loved it. So she's helping us, and she's creating a curriculum, and she's going to be the facilitator, and the kids have to report to her. So I think that's going to be a game changer, but we've only just started doing that. I mean, we really should have done it earlier, but we always just try to get it to work on our own. Not everyone seems to have as big a struggle as us. I don't know. Maybe our kids are particularly difficult. Maybe it's because they're 3 boys. I know like Hamish has learning difficulties. That obviously makes it a lot harder. But, you know, we've got friends with 2 girls and they don't have any homeschool problems. So I don't want to put people off. But there's a lot of natural learning that goes on as well. Like, I don't want to say that it's all negative. Our kids are very outgoing. They're very confident. They can speak to adults. They can confidently go to the shops in a foreign country and, you know, converse with the basic language that they know and buy something. And so I think we kind of underestimate how well-rounded this has made them. They know a little bit about a lot of things, so all about the world and geography and flags, and they are very aware of like the cultural differences, but they're very accepting. They'll be friends with anyone of any age, of any color, you know, none of that kind of factors in for them. So there's a lot of just kind of like incidental learnings that come about because of what we're doing. And I think that both my husband and I deep down know that even though it's sometimes like a bit of a shit show and that things don't seem to be, you know, going right a lot of the time, and there's you know, raising of tempers and everything because we're in this small space, I think deep down we're going to be a close family who's bonded over this amazing thing that we've done. But also the kids are going to go on to be unique, problem solving, resilient adults who are naturally not going to be happy just doing like, I just cannot see them doing an office job 9 to 5. You know, they're just not going to do that. They're going to be working on a super yacht or running a tourism, like a tour company, or they're just going to do something cool. I know it. So
something more dynamic.
Trying. Yeah, they're going to be entrepreneurs for sure. They're going to run their own companies. They're going to just be thinking outside of the square, because how can you not? How can you be raised this way and not? So that's why I'm like, all right, deep down, I know it's going to be all right. Don't stress. But yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, that sounds like, as in, I'm not sure if this helps, but that actually does sound like what most of the world schooling parents are thinking about. Like, they're not too stressed about it. I guess most of them are always stressed when they first start, because obviously it's a uncharted space in some sense, right? At least personally for them, like that was never the so-called the plan society had, right? But after a few years, most of them will go to the perspective that, you know what, let's just let nature take its course and everything will kind of work out. And it does seem like the problems you mentioned are like typical kids problem. It's just that maybe if you had sent them to school, you are just not the one that have to deal with it. You know what I mean? The teachers will have to go and deal with all this. Yeah, so homeschooling is just like, okay, now we have to handle this problem ourselves. But it sounds as if like it's the same problem with all kids, I guess. Like, they learn differently, you know. Most of them probably won't like academic learning, but being able to see the world and stuff, I think gives them an opportunity to discover more of themselves as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. My husband and I were just chatting on our walk this morning that our eldest used to get bullied at school. You know, we have no doubt that had he continued in the regular school environment, that he probably would have struggled. And so, you know, it's just something that no one really questions. It's just like, okay, you go to school. Everyone goes to school, even if it's horrible, even if you're getting bullied, even though you've got to have, you know, like the cool kids and the nerds and the geeks, and you've got to, it's just like this rite of passage that everyone has to do. And we're like, well, why? You know, my sister was bullied so badly that as an adult now, she's still affected. Why do we have to put our kids through that? Why can't they be out here with us, with their family, with, you know, in a loving environment, and not experience that severe bullying or feeling like they're not cool enough? Why can't we shelter them from that? So that's just we just want to do something different, and it does feel nerve-wracking because it's almost like you're using your kids as a social experiment, and if it doesn't work, then you're like, oh crap, you can't go back and fix it. But I guess, yeah, like the other world schooling parents, we're just trusting our gut, and like school is not the be all and end all. It's raising factory workers essentially. So we're raising like kids that are going to do something different.
Yeah, I do think like you say, a lot of things, even when I think back as when I was a kid, right? When you're a kid, you always think that your parents know everything or the teachers know everything. But when you grow up, you realize like no one knew anything. Everyone's just doing what they think is right for the daily life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like even if you send them to the schools, you can't really guarantee that the teachers really, really know what they're doing. You know what I mean? They are also just another adult trying to figure out their life and their career.
Right, exactly. And they've got 30 other kids in the classroom, and they're all having like this really impressionable input on our kids that are going to set them up as in, you know, the kind of person that they're going to be. I mean, I'm not saying that Dave and I are the best influence on our kids, but we're their parents, so we have their best interests at heart at all times, as opposed to a teacher who, you know, obviously cares about your child, but not anywhere near in the same way that as a parent you care about your child. So yeah, look, I just don't think that school is the answer or the be all and end all. And honestly, it's just more than anything, it's a convenience. It's a babysitting service, which I certainly am not complaining about, because if I had the opportunity to send my kids to school while sailing around the world at the same time, I would probably choose, because it's very difficult to homeschool them. But you know, and we have to work. So what can you do? It's like a necessary evil in a way, and I'm making it out to sound much worse than it is. Obviously there are some amazing schools out there, and most kids do come out of school and do just great and fine. But I don't think that we're doing our kids a disservice by being out here. It's going to be really interesting, because I have a good friend whose children are in the top private schools in Adelaide, and they do all the extracurricular activities, and, you know, they're basically getting the absolute opposite education to what my kids are getting. So hopefully in another 10 years, my kids won't be unemployed and like playing video games all day, and her kids will be lawyers. But anyway, we'll see. Let's hope that at least mine are happy.
Yeah, I think happiness and self-esteem are the most important for kids, at least. Let's talk a bit about work, because I think that's an interesting topic to dive into, especially since you run your own company and you have a team that is remote, right? I assume everyone is working from different parts of the world.
Yeah, completely remote. So we're the only 100% remote PR agency in the world that I know of. I've been published, my story's been published in quite a few publications now, for CNBC, Condé Nast Traveller. Never had anyone reach out to me and debate that. We're also the only PR agency in the world run from a yacht. So yeah, we've like, my freelance writer is in Thailand, my VA is in Australia, my bookkeepers, she also actually lives on a boat. My social media lady also lives on a boat. My PR girl, she lives in America. So we do have like a really spread out remote team, which I think is super cool, that, you know, that we can work this way this day and age. And it just is something that I love doing. I never thought that I would say that I love a job, because I never did love my work back in Australia. It was always just a means to an end. But I think I knew deep down that I was capable of a lot more. I just never had the drive to put that in, because I didn't, you know, I was working for the government. There was no reward. There was no, you know, no matter how hard you worked, you still got paid the same amount of money, and I was not passionate about it at all. But my personality is such that if I'm passionate about something, I will like put in 110%, and I won't stop. I'll just keep going and not give up. And I think that's probably why I've been successful, because while I'm not the smartest person in the world, I like to, you know, I don't like to think, but I know that I'm pretty average in intelligence and everything else. But I have grit, I have determination, I have resilience, and I just kind of keep going. And so yeah, that's just what I've done. I've just not given up, and managed to create this company now that is supporting our lifestyle, and still kind of pinch myself that I've made it happen, because for a lot of people, they talk about freedom being the new rich. I guess in that sense now we're rich. I never thought that we would be, well, I never thought of myself as being rich, but even though I have friends and a hell of a lot more than us probably, they're not free at all. They're completely the opposite, whereas we are completely free, and it feels pretty damn good.
For sure. I think freedom is a new rich sounds like a good quote. That definitely makes sense. And what do you see is the biggest challenge so far when you are running your company remotely or on a yacht?
Oh, look, I had that 18 months back home. Was also running a company, and to be honest, I didn't find a great deal of difference. Obviously, having like stable Wi-Fi in a house did make things slightly easier. Out here, I work off SIM cards, local SIM cards that I purchase and hotspot off, or put in like a central Wi-Fi router throughout the boat. But as you can see from this meeting right now, it does the job. I'm able to do everything that I need to do using that form of internet. A lot of people have started to get Starlink on their boats, so we're probably going to get that now soon. So that'll be interesting to see if that makes it even better again. But other than that, honestly, I've not found any real challenges. Only positives almost, because I have that real point of difference. Like if I was just a PR agency in the suburbs of Adelaide, there'd be really nothing terribly exciting about me, or no reason why I would be featured in Forbes. But because I run my company from a yacht while sailing the world, I've managed to get not only myself, but so many of my clients in publications, because I can either introduce myself as that, or they want to speak to me. The journalists like, that's super amazing. How can I interview you? And then, because then we form a relationship, I'm able to then get my clients into the same publications. So that's pretty cool. Other positives are that, I have low overheads. We're all completely remote. So all of my staff are contractors, which then obviously makes it a lot cheaper for my company to hire people that way. And our tagline is that we live the lifestyle we represent. So I'm literally out in the world as a tourist, experiencing everything that's happening on the ground. I'm meeting companies and like tour organizations and boutique hotels, and meeting these people firsthand. Yachting, we represent a lot of yachting kind of companies. So I live on a boat. I understand everything about, boat life, about charter vacations, about what it's like to learn to sail at a sailing school. They're the kind of companies that we're representing. So I think it's just really like overall a great positive that a PR person in a high-rise building in New York who wears suits every day is just not going to get, that I am able to understand and pass on to my employees, or that they also know themselves, because they're also digital nomads. And it just seems to work. It just benefits our clients in that way. But if at the same time they don't think that a PR agency run from a yacht is cool, or they think that that's going to make us not as effective, or they, if it's not a fit for them, then that's cool. They're not our clients. But if the person or the company thinks that what we're doing is amazing, and thinks that then helps us understand the travel industry or the adventure industry or the yachting and sailing industry better, then that's super awesome, and they're the kind of people that we're trying to attract.
Yeah, I think when I looked at your company, I realized, or at least my perception of it, was that it was very focused on a specific niche of people. Obviously, like sailors or sailing companies or anything related to the industry falls within either your client base or like partners, right? And the company is relatively new, right? Because you started it 2-3 years ago when you guys started the boat life.
Yeah, I started it at the end of 2018. However, I was a sole trader back then, and it didn't have its name or website or anything. So I've been doing it since then, but really kind of started full on around 2020, and then incorporated as a company about a year ago. So it's just, it's grown, learned a lot during that time, and now really feel like we're, despite kind of being run from a yacht. I really feel like we can compete with so many other companies out there that aren't doing it necessarily how we are. But that's like another thing. We say we do traditional PR in an untraditional way. And yeah.
And so what's interesting is also that you guys started like so-called a travel related company in the pandemic times, so-called, right? Because that was 2020 and that was when the pandemic hit, where you started ramping up your operations. So throughout like the coming to 2 years of operations, what would you say is like one of the most iconic strategies or thoughts that you have that really move the needle for the whole company operations? Because you guys are now featured in pretty much a lot of the major publications.
Yeah. I mean, personally, for me and my company, what I would suggest to other people wanting to do the same is that have a coach, pay the money, pay a lot of money if you need to. I've spent a lot of money on coaching, but I always make it back. So for me, that's moved the needle a lot. Pay someone that's done exactly what you want to do and do what they tell you to do. So that's that personally. For other companies wanting to feature in publications, the best strategy is, and I mean, it's called public relations for a reason, because it is all about relationship building. If I just kind of break it down quite simply, is find the publication that you want to feature in, read the that your story is actually a fit for that publication, because if they never feature experts in there, then it's unlikely that they're not going to feature you. Find stories that are very similar to what you can see yourself fitting into. Take note of who that journalist is. Reach out to that journalist on maybe LinkedIn, maybe not to start with, but definitely on Twitter. Connect with them on Twitter, start liking their tweets, start commenting, start building a relationship. Then maybe add in LinkedIn, because that's a little bit more personal. Send them a nice note, maybe Instagram, and start building a relationship before you pitch your story to them. When you pitch your story to them, make it succinct. Make sure you don't just kind of give them a really general overview of your story, but come up with a specific story angle, or even put some dot points of 4 or 5 different story angles that you can speak on. And then don't be deterred by the fact that you're probably not going to get a response. We don't even get responses most of the time. Follow up another 2 times on the same story angle. If you don't hear back again, go to the next person, or you can send to 5 or 10 people at the same time, exact same story angle, because chances are no more than 1 or 2 are going to reply anyway. But be persistent, keep responding, keep getting back to keep following up, because that's where we get most of our results, is in the follow-up. So 2nd or 3rd emails when we usually get a reply. So don't feel despondent or disheartened if you don't hear back from them, because that's very normal. They're very busy, and the reason that PR is so time consuming is because it takes a lot of work to get that story. By the time you finally see like your company in headlines, it's taken a lot of work on our part to get it there.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that you guys do a lot of the work for the clients you represent, at least. And also because you reach out to me for like a few of your clients, that what I really liked about it is that you provided, and that was what you mentioned, you provided an angle that makes it easy for me to be like, oh, hey, yeah, right? Like, I don't have to dive very deep into researching about them, because you already gave me an angle that the moment I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that's an interesting topic that I can definitely touch on. I could dive deeper and research to find more topics, but at least I know straight away, at least there's an angle that I can really go for. So I guess that's like pretty important for PR, right?
Yeah, that's the key, is to make the journalists or the podcasters' job easier. And so if we can make their life easier, think about the fact that they're getting probably 100 other emails that day, all like vying to get a story in that publication. If we can make it easier, if we really professional, if we do what we say we're going to do, we follow up when we say we're going to follow up, if we provide links, if we've got the photos there, if we just make their job easier, then they're more likely to choose us. And that, yeah, like it's not rocket science, although obviously I've learned a lot, and there are a lot of little things that we do to get noticed. But at the same time, a big chunk of it is just being consistent, persistent, and resilient, because you are going to get rejections. It's just a natural part of it. But in our job, if we get a no, the fact that they've written back to us is still a win. We're like, yes, they wrote back to us. They know we exist. And so then the next time when you email them, they're more likely to open your email because they remember your name. And so that's just how, like, it's a lot of little wins. We're just chipping away. And then finally, you know, okay, I've got a contact. At the moment, I've got like 2 solid contacts at Forbes, and I've got like a solid contact at Travel and Leisure. And that's just what you do. You're just trying to build up your media list, build up your relationships, so that when a client comes up that you're like, oh yes, their story would be awesome for Travel and Leisure. When you send that email, eventually, the longer you've been doing this, you know that at least the journalist is probably going to get back to you. And that's all you can really ask for, is that that relationship of at least respect, where they are reading your emails. Because if you were to email them yourself right now, the chances are they're probably going to just push delete before they even read it. But that's just, you know, they're not being rude, I suppose. It's just that they have to manage their time, and they can't afford to waste their time reading a pitch from someone they've never heard of when they've got an inbox full of reliable PR people that they've worked with already.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Like I got quite a lot of emails myself that I definitely didn't have enough time to see through all of that, and that's really on the back burner that I still need to look through, right? So let's conclude with
because you did it through Source Bottle, didn't you? I think that's how we connected. Was it Source Bottle?
Harrow.
And so that's another Harrow. So yeah, so Source Bottle's in Australia, Harrow's like the rest of the world. They're both great resources. So if you're wanting to kind of do your own PR, sign up to Source, SOURCE Bottle, and HARO stands for Help a Reporter Out. They're 2 ways that you can at least try to get some publicity for yourself.
Yep. And to conclude, let's go with a few quick fire questions. Where is your favorite travel destination so far?
Probably Grenada in the Caribbean.
Oh, that's a nice place for some beaches and sun for sure. And what are 3 of the most useful things you would say for boat life that is essential for, you know, living on the boat?
Noise cancelling earphones. I hope you haven't been hearing my boys fighting in the background.
Just a bit.
Yeah, I heard them fighting over something a minute ago, and then the door banged. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even yell out to tell them to be quiet. But yeah, if only noise cancelling cancelled out not only the background noise, but also all of the noise for you. I don't know if that exists, but I do need to look into that. What else? Noise cancelling earphones. Oh gosh, boat life. 3 things. Oh, you put me on the spot. Sunglasses. I've got 50 pairs of sunglasses. And help me out here.
Sunscreen. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, sunscreen, because I haven't worn that enough, and I'm probably going to look like a haggard old woman by the time I'm 50.
Cool. I'm actually surprised these questions stump quite a lot of travelers, because I thought it would be almost a very easy to answer question, but actually a lot of people, when they really think about it, they're like, I'm not actually too sure what's the most important stuff. But that's always an interesting question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no issues with the noise, because obviously, like I say, this podcast is very casual and very like raw, because I understand whenever travelers go traveling, it's not easy to find the perfect environment to do recordings and stuff. It's just going to be, that's how it is. Yeah, so that's
I could have gone to a cafe, but then you would have had all of that background noise. So, and I did warn my kids before I got on the interview, but my husband's probably stepped off the boat for something, and so now there's no one watching him, and so yeah, it's a free for all.
Okay, and if there's anyone looking to transit into this boat life, right, what do you think is one of the most important thing to consider beforehand when they decide on it?
I think if your relationship is already rocky, it's not going to get better on a boat. So have a solid relationship, do the work before you go. If your mental health state isn't great, get all the counselling, do everything that you can do before you go, because it's going to test you in every possible way. And what else? Probably learn how to maintain a boat, or have a husband who can do it, because that's a big part of boat life. Unless you're like independently wealthy and can pay for everything to get fixed, which isn't even really a possibility, because if you're out in the middle of the ocean and something breaks, you need to be able to fix it. You can't call in the man then. So yeah, just hopefully you've got a handy partner, or let's not be sexist, hopefully you yourself, if you're a woman, can do it too. I can't, but I know plenty of women who can. And assume that it will cost more money than what you have, and don't spend your whole budget on a flash boat. Spend like 60% of your budget, or even 50% of your budget on a boat, which means you're probably going to have to get a smaller boat than what you want, or not as fancy a boat. But you will need that big chunk of money left, because things break all the time and it costs more than you think.
Oh, okay. Those are really good tips. So if anyone wants to connect with you guys, either clients who want to look for a PR firm, or anyone wants to follow your story, how do they find you guys?
So my company's named RoamGeneration, ROAM. Roam is also the name of our boat. And you can find us at www.roamgeneration.com. All of social media is just at RoamGeneration. And you can email me at erin@roamgeneration.com. And yeah, I would be like so happy for you to reach out if you've got any questions, any queries about PR, or about boat life, or about, life in general. Love hearing from people. And if you wanted to kind of follow our journey, although I'm terrible at actually continuing to post on Facebook lately because I feel like I'm so busy, but there is a record of our whole trip on Facebook, and it's called Sailing to Rome. So sailing, TOROAM. And that's just a story of everything we've done over the last 4 or 5 years. But I don't post as regular as I should. So yeah, that's how you can find us and learn all about our story and reach out.
Cool. I'll drop the links in the show notes for the social media, and obviously the website, and maybe your email. And thank you, Erin, for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, you asked a lot of different questions that allowed me to kind of come up with different answers. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we should definitely catch up again soon with your journey.
Definitely. Yeah.